Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show. Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And it is my honor to introduce today's guest, which is Michael Milliet. Hi, Glenn.
Good morning.
Good morning. I am thrilled to have you on this podcast for many reasons. And after we have our podcast and we record our podcast, our audience is going to understand why. But I have to start by saying that you are a true professional. The way you present yourself, the way you talk, your communication and how you deliver it. And we met at an event that Dan Kushel put together. Put it on, and I had several of the people that participated, such as Ian Garlic, on my podcast as well. And we met there, and I thought to myself, I have to interview you for my podcast because the things you say, but also the presentation, and it is a pleasure having you here. And a big shout out to Dan for introducing us.
Hey, listen, it is my honor to be here because you have so much value that I see you bring to the folks who work with you, the folks who get on the podcast and study the value that so many of your presenters brings to not only improving our business, but even improving our personal lives, because they're so intertwined. So thank you for having me here.
You are very welcome. Okay, so let's first of all start with your bio. So I'm going to read it, and then you can add to it, and then we're going to get into the conversation. Okay, so you are an international speaking professional, and you talk about communication, presentation, and sales closing. You are an expert at that, and that's what you talk about.
Yes.
And you have a great story. You told me your story, and I love your life story. It's inspiring. It's interesting, but let's say that you work with thousands of global business professionals, from entrepreneurial startup to industry giants, to improve their ability to communicate, connect, and close like a pro. And I think that is, when I think about you, I think about a professional. And
I'm honored.
Yes. And you've been called the communication expert of experts. So let's start with your story. Let's start, if you don't mind,
from the beginning.
Let's start with the beginning. You have a great life story. So if you don't mind sharing that, because I think it's very inspirational.
I would love to. So for anyone who's watching, a little bit about me. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, 1949. And I grew up in New Orleans. I'm originally from New Orleans. Now, at the ripe old age of about 5 years old, I was diagnosed with a birth defect in my left leg, which put a steel brace on my leg throughout all of my preteen years. Now, why is this important? Well, basically, in the 1950s, when I went on the playground, I was not the first kid that got picked for baseball or football or anything else. In fact, the politically incorrect statement was, who's going to take the cripple kid? And that was me. And what I learned early on was that if Glenn was going to be happy, Glenn had to make that happen on his own. Now, the caveat to that story is, not only did I have the bad leg, however, God's got a crazy sense of humor, because my mom was a dancing school teacher. So now my mom, she could have said, well, son, you can't dance. However, my mother, in her infinite wisdom, said, well, if you're not going to dance, you're going to sing. Now, I'm 5 years old, and I don't know if I can sing. But when my mother says sing, brother, you sing. And so why is this important? We know that one of the greatest fears all of us have is to get up in front of our peers and to speak. We also know that the most formative years of our life are birth to age 7. We are in an environment where we are like a new computer, and software is being downloaded into us, which becomes our belief system, how we operate on a daily basis. Well, because I was in front of anywhere from 500 to 5,000 people singing as a child, I don't have the fear of getting up in front of a group and presenting my message. So anyway, I started singing. I went through high school singing. I started bands. I played around the several different countries where I sang lead vocalist. And then I went to college and I have a degree in voice. Now, when I was in the entertainment world, I never thought anything about what I do now in the speaking, communicating, presentation, and coaching world. However, there are 3 key elements that will make a person a powerful communicator. And the 3 elements are no different than what makes an entertainer a powerful entertainer. So those 3 key elements are verbiage, the words that we use. Now, if I were singing, we call it lyrics, right? And then you must possess a voice as a singer, whether you're an Elvis fan or a Beyonce fan, they have to have a voice. Well, as a speaker and communicator, I have to have a voice. We'll talk a little bit about the power of voice. And then thirdly, rarely did Elvis Presley stand still with his hands under his armpits and sing. He was always moving. Same thing with Beyonce. So what we know is that the third element of being a powerful communicator is visual messaging. How we engage our hands, the position of our body, how I move my shoulder. Everything is judged by the observer. So after I had a career in the music industry, I decided to get into the beauty industry. That's a whole nother story for another podcast. So anyway, I got into the beauty industry. And if you can't tell, I'm a little bit type A, I'm a little anal, and I'm okay with that because I always was programmed to do my best, to do your best. Forget perfection, just do your best. And so when I got into the beauty industry for the first 3 years I was in business, my numbers moved up, 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 up. And then my numbers leveled off. And this is a transitional point. So I said, I looked external and I said, I wonder if the challenge is the economy. The economy was great. I said, maybe it's my pricing. I'm not in line with my competitors. It was spot on. And I said, maybe it's my location. Nope. I was on a major thoroughfare. And I realized early on, my challenge was not external. It was internal. Now, for many of your listeners on the podcast, I will share that I broke out a very old piece of technology, a very old piece of equipment. Most of you are way too young. You've never heard of it. It's basically called a cassette tape recorder. Yes, I know you're nodding your head. You know what it is. Now, today, it would be this, my cell phone. But here's the key. What I did for one solid month, I audio recorded every consultation that I did. And I would go home and listen. This is important, not as the stylist behind the chair. I listened as if I were the person in the chair, the client. And what I observed was negative verbiage, vague and confusing language.
So give us some examples, Glenn, of that.
So, for example, someone would say, will this be the blonde I'm looking for? And I might say, sort of. Sort of. No, there's no sort of. It either is or it is not. Will my hair have more shine? Kind of. That's not confident. So negative and confusing words would be kind of, sort of, it's like, maybe.
I think.
I think that's another one. So what I'm sharing with you is that we speak words, but the listener perceives an image in their brain. So if I were to say right now, King Kong climbing the Eiffel Tower. Well, you don't see the letters King, Kong. You have an image of King Kong in your brain right now. So when I say sort of, kind of, it's like, I'm trying to, that is not clear verbiage. That is the power of verbiage. Every word creates an image in the mind of the listener. And now that's important. However, when I understand the language of the listener, I don't use my words. I use the words that they relate to.
Give me an example
So,
of that.
well, let's say, for example, I'm going to speak to a client in the salon. And I ask this is the $1 billion question, and I'll share it. I want to preface. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not in business to sell what you want to sell. You are in business to sell what your client wants most to purchase. Now, of course, we know that there are extremes. We're not going to let them hurt themselves. That's not going to happen. But how many times have any of us gone to a salon and the stylist says, "So, what do you want me to do with your hair today?" Now, when I ask that question, the client might say, "Oh, just a haircut, just a trim." However, I have to understand that the client who comes to me used to go to someone else. And I want to understand why they left that other person. So in my consultation, I would say, we're just going to call the client Mary. That's going to be our generic client. I would say, "Now, Miss Mary, I know you're on the appointment book for a haircut today. However," transitional word, "if you could change anything about your hair, the texture, the density, the length, the color. In summertime, do you find you get frizzy hair in humid weather? Basically, what would you change?" And when the client says, "Oh, when summertime comes in, my hair gets frizzy," let me write that down. And I want them to see me write it down because that is subconscious learning. And, my ends are always dry and brittle. Let me write that down. And, Glenn, I'm getting a little older and I think my hair's thinning out a little bit. Let me write that down. So when they're finished, I would say, "Is there anything else, Miss Mary?" And she would say, "Nope, that's it." Then I'm going to summarize. Frizzy hair, yes. Thinning, yes. Dry ends, yes. Well, here's the point. I know exactly what Mary wants to purchase. Frizz-free, thicker hair with quality integrity ends. See, I don't have to sell something when I already know what you want to purchase.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So how do you progress from here? What do you do next? So you have
So,
Mary, you found out what she wanted, which is a key point, and I agree with you. What do we
correct.
do next?
So my next question would be, so Miss Mary, if I were able to offer you a service today where I could make your hair 100% humidity resistant up to 6 months, and there is no harsh chemical involved, it will make your hair look thicker and improve the integrity of your ends. Is that something you might be interested in? No one ever says no, right? There are, I put together what I call the 10 buying and selling insights, basically the psychology of the sale. Now, I want to preface this. I don't teach selling something. I teach using your skills and your talents and your capabilities to provide a solution to what's causing the challenge. So I want to give you these because this is how I create. Number one, we must understand that every situation is a selling situation. There's no such thing as a non-selling situation. When you woke up this morning and you said, "I'm going to wear the black top with the beautiful, almost, I think, gray lavender looking." Why? Because you said, "I like this. It makes me what? Happy."
That's
Now I picked the black shirt with the tan jacket because it makes me happy. All right. So number one, every situation is a selling situation. Number two, this is huge. Now I don't have a tattoo on my body, but if I had a tattoo, my tattoo would say, "Selling is the transfer of emotion." Selling is the transfer of emotion. In my consultation, I find out what you're not happy about. And then I go to my solution menu and I can offer solutions that will transform what's unhappy into a happy end result.
So
So when
then I
she's,
love that part of
thank
it's
you.
what brings you joy, and that is a key. It's key. I am all about organization and putting everything in place and
Yes,
organizing and so it is the joy. You look at things, either they bring you joy and you keep them, or they don't, right? It's the Marie Kondo way. So you
it,
are either you like it and it brings you joy. If it doesn't, then you thank it for the service that it has done for you and you let it go.
yes. And so getting back to the story, when I realized the challenge was not external, I realized it was internal, and it was my communication skills. And so I studied the most powerful communicators on the planet. I hired coaches to work with me. And then what I realized, because I am a systems kind of guy, I realized that communication is not an art, it is a system. And then once I learned it and created my own system, I trained all of my team members. And within a short period of time, we became a multi-million-dollar operation. Not because we did better haircuts or better color, but because we improved our ability to communicate, connect, and close a conversation or a consultation. Not selling, by solving. And so, with that,
Absolutely.
uh, in the beauty industry, I became known as the guy. If you want to learn and train your team how to improve sales, increase revenue, build high value client relationships, you're going to bring in Glenn. Glenn's going to get it done.
Yeah, and it can be very easily, you can go the other route, like what happened to you is like, oh, it's the economy, or people in the beauty industry cannot make money, or like point fingers
No, no.
everywhere. But you had that vision of and that realization of looking, okay, what am I doing? How can I improve? And that is always the
Yes,
question that we have to ask, because at the end of the day, it's us.
it
We
is
can
always
change the
us.
economy. We can change what's going on out. I mean, we can to a degree, but in our sphere, we have to see what can we change in our own sphere.
One of the things I love to share with my clients and people who want to work with me is this: chaos is inevitable, whether it's the economy, a hurricane, an earthquake. Chaos is inevitable. Now, you have two choices. You can say, why me, God? Or what am I supposed to learn from what took place? Now, as I said, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. And in 2005, we had a little thing called Hurricane Katrina. The city was underwater. Now, millionaires were made post Katrina because the federal government is not going to let a major city go under. They pumped in so much money that we didn't even know that there was an economy problem in 2008. So people came in to rebuild the city. And so what I share with you is this: when the water rises, it is your opportunity to learn how to swim. When the walls that protect you fall down, it is your opportunity to climb up on the debris and see opportunities you couldn't see when the walls were up. So don't ask why me, Lord. Ask, what am I to learn, and how can I benefit from what has taken place? And also, how can I benefit others? That's key. Always
That's right.
put you always put other people first. The great Zig Ziglar said, "You'll get everything you want out of life if you help enough other people get what they want."
That's
And it's a true
exactly right.
statement. True statement.
That's right. That's exactly right. And you definitely are doing that. You are helping other companies, you are helping other individuals. You are always either speaking or in front of entrepreneurs and making their lives better in whatever the area of their communication, connection, selling, closing. So if our listeners
Yeah,
would like to get a hold of you, Glenn,
surely.
because they want to know more about what you do, they want to get a hold of you, they want you to come and speak, how can they do that?
Very easy. I am a guy who answers his own phone. So if they want to reach out with a text or simply give me a call, my number is 504 250 3969, or you can email me at Glenn, Glenn, at biz, B-I-Z, com, X as in X-ray, P-E-R-T www.businesscommunicationsexpert.com or go to my website, www.businesscommunicationsexpert.com. And I want to share this with you if your viewers are interested. On June 5th and 6th, I'm doing a 2-day live event in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is on my website, and it is called Communicate, Connect, and Close Like a Pro. It's going to be I'm bringing in some amazing people to work with. I'm excited about this event.
Very exciting. And Glenn, we are recording now, but this piece, I like our pieces to be evergreen because people search, they want to know. So for our listeners and our viewers, if you miss the opportunity, go to the website, there will be more because Glenn is speaking constantly at different places around the country, and I'm sure you will be able to find something that will fit where you are at and what you are interested in.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Glenn, it was a pleasure having you on this podcast. What a great conversation. Thank you for sharing your story, and I hope it inspired others. I actually know it inspired others, and thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Anything you need, you know to reach out to me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.